talking into my microphone. Got the signs here and everything all over the place. We, I would like a motion, please, with regard to the stipulated expulsion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Unger and a second by Mr. Clausen. All in favor?
Aye.
So we have 6 ayes and 1 who was not present at the time. Oops. Mrs. Hinton was not present during closed session for that portion. All right. Next, with regard, I need to just do one little piece of business we don't usually have to do, and that is with regard, we do have someone present tonight, a trustee, Mrs. Hinton, who was unable at the time the agenda was posted, was fine. And then at the beginning, prior to the meeting, she began feeling unwell and not able to participate in person. However, she is present via Zoom. And so we need board consensus that we accept her presence via Zoom without having been noticed beforehand. Everyone okay with that? Thank you. And if anyone, Mrs. Hinton, if anyone over the age of 18 is in the room with you, that's fine. You just need to identify that person.
Sure. It'll be my husband. He'll be in and out, but he's out right now.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next, with regard to the consensus on the order of business, I'd like to make a suggestion with regard to that, and that is that we move item 9.04, the award of the district-wide fencing project, up to make that our first discussion action item this evening. Is that all right with everyone? Thank you. Any other suggestions on consensus on order of business? You good otherwise? Okay. Huh, boy. Okay. Next, hooray, one of my favorite things we get to do again. We have our student representative. Oh, I didn't talk about, hold on. This, we have a translator here this evening. If
Tenemos interpretación.
Pardon me?
My apologies.
There is, if you go to your Zoom screen, there is a little circle at the bottom, and click on that, and our translator will assist you throughout the meeting. So now.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos. Disculpas por esa interrupción. Esta noche tenemos interpretación como todas las demás juntas. Si desean nuestros servicios, por favor, levanten su mano virtual para saber que tenemos una audiencia en español. Después de eso, cuando yo termine de hablar, va a aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla un icono de un mapa mundi, un globo terráqueo, y lo tienen que apachurrar y seleccionar español. Gracias.
Thank you. All right. Now I get to be excited about one of our favorite things, one of my favorite things, which is our student representatives to the board. And tonight, welcome so much to Colton, Ruby, and Taya. And you can flip a coin, you can do rock, paper, scissors, whatever you wish to figure out who should go first.
I think Morro Bay, this is me and my partner Ruby. We are the co-presidents at Morro Bay High School. We'll be representing Morro Bay High for this year. We do have a little presentation, and then along with that, we both have some notes on our phone that we'll be reading off of. To start off, just as an overall, a big goal that we've tried to have at Morro Bay since COVID happened, and obviously distance learning a lot happened, was trying to get a higher amount of participation from students in extracurricular activities like sports games, dances, rallies, all that. We just really wanted to make a goal to get as many students to all those events as possible. So we made a little collection of some pictures that we've had taken over really only the past 3 weeks that we've had in school. So we've had a very full 3 weeks full of sports games over the past at our school. Starting off, we have our boys and girls water polo team, excuse me, that have both had a great start to our season. The boys, I believe, are currently 9-1. We just lost to Slow. Yeah, it's a little bit awkward. We just lost to Slow like an hour ago. Yeah, in my script it says we're undefeated, but that's not a thing anymore. But yeah, there's a picture in the top right of that presentation right there. I think it's a little bit blocked off by the Zoom screen, but that's me guarding someone, and my facial expression is how we're feeling about our season so far. For anybody who can't see it, I'm smiling from ear to ear. But yeah, so just trying to get as many students to our sports games as possible. Last Friday, you can see from those pictures that our student section really showed out for a blackout football game. That picture is actually from our theme the week before, which was luau, which we sold Lays at the entrance for $1 each to help raise money for the victims of the Maui wildfires. So we raised some money for them. And then last week, along with the blackout, we sold pirate eye patches to help fundraise for that cause as well. And then we do have a significant increase in students actually participating on those sports teams at our school this year. All but one team have a bigger roster on both JV and varsity than they did last year on those teams, like girls tennis, boys and girls water polo, as well as girls volleyball. So that's a great thing to see at Morro Bay. We're just seeing a huge increase in more student participation in basically all aspects of student life, which is a really good thing to see. Also, if you could go to the next slide, please. We hosted our welcome back rally 2 weeks ago, which is really just to get students in the mindset of, okay, we're back at school, time to get ready for things, but we can also, like, school can be fun. It's not just sitting in a classroom. A lot of students seem to think that, oh, school is just sit in the classroom all day, but there's a huge social aspect that we're really trying to showcase to everybody and get them involved. So at this rally, you can see we had Dance Fusion perform. We had a school-wide rock, paper, scissors tournament, which was really awesome to see. We had everybody get up from the bleachers, all about 800 students, all up playing rock, paper, scissors against each other. And it came down to a senior and a freshman. And we all know high school students love saving money. So the prize for that rock, paper, scissors tournament was free homecoming tickets to our homecoming dance on September 30th. And the freshmen did end up winning. So that was really awesome to see all these little huddled up freshmen go from this to they're all just super excited for their freshman that won up there. So that was really awesome to see. And then we also had a Mario Kart race. As you can see, those big inflatable balls, which we did steal that idea from Slow High ASB. So thank you for that. Taya, thank you for that. We had students racing the big inflatable balls. It was perfectly safe. Mr. Scaldi approved it. Nobody was hurt. It was super awesome. Got everybody up on their feet. As you can see, there's a good theme of trying to get everybody involved, get them excited for school. So that's really what we're trying to do. And then also we had back to school night, which is really for the parents, but just to give you an update, that went really well. And we had awesome sunny weather, and as many families as we could were out there and learning about the classes that their child will be taking throughout the year. Ruby?
Okay, it's working. I'm Ruby Scott. I am a co-president of Morro Bay High with Colton. Just like you said, like a big goal of last year and we're continuing this year is to get students to be excited and happy to be at school and participating in things that they actually enjoy. So moving right along, one of the this past Friday we had our Club Rush held. Club Rush was a ton of fun. We had an extended lunch, so the schedule that day was a little bit different to allow for a lot of fun things to be happening. In the bottom left of our presentation, our ASB advisor, Miss Van Zee, is super excited about our new 9 square setup. So kids are having a lot of fun with that, as well as just signing up with a bunch of clubs. This year, there has been maybe like the most amount of clubs present ever. Some of them are interest only, like a climbing club and a group of students that bike to school on Friday. But then others are more hands-on, such as the Precious Plastics Club, which mostly engineering students have started that club, but it's being used to recycle plastic within our campus. So like a lot of the science classes that use like microplastics and like tips for a lot of the equipment can be reused and recycled into new equipment that we have on our campus, which is super exciting. And we're super excited. Mr. Scaldi is very excited about presenting how well our school did on the preliminary state assessment, which I think that we'll be seeing later of this evening. But we're just super excited about our students as being happy and excited to be on campus for the fun social aspects of it, but as well that we are obviously at school for academic purposes, and students are also able to flourish in that department as well. Recently, our drama program just completed their auditions and callbacks for the fall play that they'll be putting on, which this year is Alice in Wonderland, and their performances will be happening through October 20th to the 28th. So super excited. We just got our new theater facility, which they got to hold their play in the spring with like a real actual stage at our school, which is super exciting. I think that will lead to even more turnout to our plays, which are super amazing productions. And then as for upcoming events of this month in September, ASB has a lot of fun things planned for the students on our campus. This year we have some sports commissioners who are super excited and passionate about their job and making a difference on campus. So they have started organizing a fantasy football league, which the draft is going to be held tomorrow at lunch. So all of the students that signed up and teachers to create their teams are going to be planning that out tomorrow, hopefully getting some good players on their teams. I'm not an expert with football, but I'm sure that those who are participating are going to have a great time. And obviously we have homecoming coming up on the 30th. So for announcing our theme, we have been planning on creating a video that will come out on the 15th to announce to the entire student body what the theme of the dance will be. And then leading up to homecoming, we have a bunch of fun stuff, including Powder Puff, which I'm super excited to participate in. I've never been a sports girl, but gonna work on my athleticism for Powder Puff. The practices start on the 19th, and then the game will be held on the 27th. And then we have 2 rallies that will be leading up to homecoming on the 22nd and the 29th. We'll have our skit rally and then our final 5, which are a tradition that we've upheld every year. And then finally on the 25th, we'll hold our royalty dinner for the homecoming court, and homecoming is happening on September 30th. So that's kind of our plans for the upcoming month, and we're super excited to get to come report.
Is the homecoming football game on the 29th?
Or yes, the homecoming game is against Santa Maria on the 29th, and then the dance will be the following Saturday, so the 30th. Yeah, that's all we have from Morro Bay. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Taya Kolpakov. I am Slow High's vice president. Lila could not come. She is at a volleyball game, but I'm happy to be here. Our most recent thing is we had our first rally, our welcome back rally, and we were very excited to see high spirit and high participation. The freshmen showed up and they were enthusiastic, bringing energy, and that is a shocker for the first rally. That's their first exposure kind of to school spirit. So that was very exciting. We're working on getting our juniors more involved. We'll get them there. We had lots of games. We did have a blow up ball game. But mimicry is the best compliment, the best flatter, right? And we had a senior banner, which our seniors were very excited about, where everyone signed it and we hung it up as our class did the class yell. So that was a vision that followed through. We've also had very high spirit at our football games. We've been having different spirit days, and I think the best demonstration of our recent increase in spirit is at our AG game last week. At AG, we went over to AG and we had a student section at their school. We might not have won, but we won in spirit. So that was nice to see all the way over at AG. We also have the freshman class officer election. Last year we had a couple class officer elections where there wasn't an election because we only had 3 people or even 2 people run. But this year our freshmen again are showing up and we have 4 people running. So I'm in charge of that election, and the election will be running next Monday and Tuesday. And I'm excited for our freshmen to progress throughout their years. We also just had our 24-hour musical on Friday through Saturday, and if you're familiar, it is a very chaotic experience, but it was Frozen-esque themed, but not technically Frozen. Very successful, and it was sold out. So just another demonstration that people are representing our school. We also have Suicide Prevention Week next week on a more somber note. Our new commissioner of mental health is doing a wonderful job preparing for that, working with the new mental areas we have established at SLO High. SLO High has been doing a lot, and ASB is working closely with them and recognizing students' mental health a lot more and more opportunities available just to help that, I guess, are less invasive. Like students are able to go to much more encouraging places rather than I need help. It's much more, here's a welcoming place that's more proactive. So that is lovely to see on our campus. We also have our homecoming. The game is October 6th and the dance is October 7th. Our theme is Bring Back the Beat. So some days we have our Metal Monday, we have Western Wednesday, and days like that with different themes related to different music genres. So we are very excited for that. We also have back to school night tomorrow, which will be good to have the parents back on campus and everyone's rolling around and everyone's coming back. We also have our dodgeball intramural. That's our first intramural. Dodgeball is always a classic to start with. We'll have our staff team and it gets everyone excited, gives people things to do at lunch. It's a great way to get started. And last, we have our club rush next Wednesday. We have 2 ICCs, which are inter-club commissioners, I believe, and those are the ones that manage all of our clubs, and ASB chose to pick 2 this year because we're putting more of an emphasis on our clubs and our club rush to be very successful and more of an emphasis to get everyone recognized and involved. So that is all I have for you.
You are off and running, all of you. This is amazing that you are, I imagine you were meeting over the summer, at least towards the end of summer, to begin planning all these events and be ready to hit the ground the way you are. So thank you for that dedication. I would love to say you must stay for the entire meeting so you know what's going on, but that would be not helpful for your studies and for other commitments you may have. So feel you are, of course, welcome to stay as long as you wish. I know that Mr. Rollin will be having a presentation on San Luis Obispo High School, what's going on there from his end of things. If you'd like to stay, you certainly may, but we also understand that you have other things going on, obviously, as you described, as well as the schoolwork on top of it. So thank you so much. We really appreciate the reports.
Great updates, guys.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Mr. Clausen?
Just complimenting them on their updates.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much.
Good job.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have San Luis Obispo High School program highlights.
Did I do that right? So it shows in the school board members here. Presentation doesn't matter that much. It's okay if it doesn't work. I got it. All right. Well, thank you for having me here. As you know, I will welcome any opportunity to share about the great things happening at SLO High. And we definitely are, as you heard just here today, off to a great start. It's so fun to see our students connecting and reconnecting with each other. It's so fun to see our students engaging with our teachers and classes, and that participation and that energy that Teo was talking about is real. Over 330 students participating in athletics. That 24-hour musical that we talked about had 55 students participating, and they performed to a packed house. It was pretty awesome and special. And we have our back to school night tomorrow night. So again, this other opportunity to bring our community together
and really harness that energy of the beginning of the school year to do the important work that we'll be doing throughout the school year. And as our parents arrive tomorrow, the mic's a little weird, that's okay. As our parents arrive tomorrow, they'll be greeted by our band who'll be out in front. Our cheer team will be there welcoming them, and ASB also will be welcoming them. And ASB will be helping our parents navigate our campus, which is looking beautiful. Construction's looking great. They'll help parents navigate our campus during back to school night. So we're celebrating all of that. And our students talked about this too. I think Colton brought it up about the data side of things too. So part of our story is about participation and energy, but part of it too is about our academic performance of our students and our high expectations for our students. And you see evidence of that in this presentation that will happen later about preliminary SBAC data, where you see our students in ELA and math going up year over year, coming back after the pandemic and getting to those up to those pre-pandemic marks, and then in science exceeding those pre-pandemic marks. You see it in our AP exams, where we have more students than ever before passing AP exams with scores of 3 or higher. So that's something to celebrate. You see it with our CTE pathway completers, that our students are taking advantage of these really rich opportunities that we have and seeing it through all the way to the whole pathway. So more students than ever before completing CTE pathways. And also you see it with the belief, the deep belief that all means all, and that we need high expectations for all of our students, and that we as a system and as educators can help all students rise to those levels. So as a staff, we've also been really working on having the number of students who are failing classes or with D's and F's go down. And despite all of the best efforts of our staff during the pandemic, that was a tough time. And so you see us coming back from that, and those numbers going down from 400 to 318 to 234 with an F over the course of a school year. Same for the numbers of students with a D or an F, that those numbers are also coming down. So it speaks to the tremendous work of our students, our families, and our staff. Same thing, as that happens and as test scores go up, of course, you're going to see the number of, or the percentage of A's, B's, and C's go up as well. And that's what we want as we prepare our students for what is after high school, and just to learn deeply about what we're doing. So those are all good stories to tell. And as at the beginning of a school year with the staff, of course, you're talking about this. You're talking about data. You're talking about purpose and all of those things. You're also really focused on some of the work that we're doing with learning sprints and professional learning communities, and our work with Dr. Michael McDowell about surface learning and deep learning and learning for transfer. So we're talking about all of those things, but we're also talking about who we are as educators and what that work feels like for us to give our lives to this. So I just wanted to share this one quote that we also talked about as a staff in our opening days together, and it's from Parker Palmer's The Courage to Teach. And the quote is, "This book builds on a simple premise. Good teaching cannot be reduced to technique. Good teaching comes from the identity and integrity of the teacher. Good teachers join self, subject, and students in the fabric of life because they teach from an integral and undivided self. They manifest in their own lives and invoke in their students a capacity for connectedness. They are able to weave a complex web of connections between themselves, their subjects, and their students, so that students can learn to weave a world for themselves. The methods used by these weavers vary widely: lectures, Socratic dialogues, laboratory experiments, collaborative problem solving, creative chaos. The connections made by good teachers are held not in their methods, but in their hearts, meaning heart in its ancient sense, the place where intellect and emotion and spirit and will converge in the human self." And so that's an important quote for us to start with at the opening of a school year. And to that point, too, one of the things we're focusing on always in a school is school culture. And of course, the ways we habitually behave, the ways we habitually act as a community, as an organization, matter a great deal. And one of the ways we're guiding that discussion, and this started with our instructional leadership team, is with an often used but simple and I think profound acronym about think. So before you think, or before you act, before you speak, it's important to think. And also in reflection, right? It's good to always remain thoughtful. And as an acronym, it's about being true and helpful and inspiring. Is what I am doing necessary? Am I being kind? And so that's something that we've woven into our opening of the school year. During our first 2 Mondays, we've done school culture activities that have our students reflecting on that. in their own lives and the lives of our school, and what that looks like for us to behave in this way. So that's been a good, positive way to focus the beginning of our school year. And then just one last thing I'll mention, this is one other quote. And this is something that after we talked about this as a staff, someone's like, I think that's from Barbie, the movie. And it may be, I don't really know, but we were talking about enoughness. So one of the things we were talking about as a staff was how we're building on so much that is good, but we are always striving to grow in our capacity as individuals and as a collective community. So how can we simultaneously talk about those things that are good and really celebrate those, but also always be open to what's next for ourselves and for our community. So here's this little quote, and then I'll stop. There are things you might want to be more of, more open, more honest, more true, more authentic, more free, more connected, more intentional, more purposeful. Those are all expressions of your enoughness. They aren't about changing yourself, they're about being yourself. You were enough before, you are enough now, and you will continue to be enough as you become more. And believing that when the world keeps whispering otherwise is brave. So we have that sort of the courage to teach and that bravery of this work that we do. And I think for us, that's connected not with us just as educators, but with our students and that shared leadership model that we have and that you got to see a little bit of tonight. So that's my little thing about SLO High, but it's always great to be here. And I'll probably see some of you at back to school night tomorrow night as well. So thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Mr. Unger.
Mr. Dickinson, and I just wanted to thank you for hosting the CSBA Roadshow last Wednesday. It was really impressive to be able to bring school board members throughout our county and Santa Barbara County up to San Luis Obispo High School and see the great things that you're doing. So thank you to you and your staff for hosting that.
Our next item is 7.01, which is correspondence. And at the time the agenda was posted, we had no correspondence. Next is 7.02, public comment. This is a time for people to speak to the board about something that is of concern to the district and the board that is not, doesn't appear elsewhere on the agenda this evening, or if it is on the agenda but you would like to speak now rather than wait for that item, you're welcome to do so. We have a strict 3-minute rule that we have timekeepers who will help with that. We request that over on the back table there are some yellow sheets. It's helpful if you fill that out and provide it to us. Otherwise, when you approach the dais, if you would state your name, then we'll take it from there. We'll first take care of people who are here who wish to speak, and then we do have a written comment that was received through email that was requested that it be read into the record. Oh, okay, looks like you're done. All right. So it looks like we have one person here to speak. Thank you, Ryan. And that is Andrea Luker.
Yes,
Andrea,
thank you.
did I say that correctly?
Good evening. I'm Andrea Luker. I'm a 36-year resident of the county, and I listened to the public comment section at your August 15th meeting. And I've also read several articles about the alleged actions of one of your employees. I don't know the individuals that spoke on the 15th, and I don't know the employee, but I can tell you as a mother of a daughter, and actually a 2011 Moorabay High School graduate, I felt that speaker's anguish about the damage that had occurred to her daughter and apparently still is happening. Her public testimony compelled me to travel all the way from Los Osos tonight to talk to you. As background, I worked in local government for 35 years, including 14 years as the head of an agency, 7 for the city of Moorabay as city manager, and 7 as the harbor manager at Port San Luis Harbor District. I retired in 21. It's been great. During those 35 years, I dealt with a number of situations where there were allegations against employees for negative behaviors, including sexual harassment. In those cases, and as recommended by our legal counsel at both agencies, the accused employee was immediately put on paid administrative leave while an investigation was conducted, including interviews of those affected. I'm also sure you're aware that in the community you serve, there's much discussion and concern about how the situation between a district teacher and coach and apparently multiple victims, including students, school aides, and parents were handled or was handled or is being handled. Likely the reason that you're not having a lot of people at your meeting probably is because, first of all, people fear public speaking, and it's scary to be up here, even for somebody that's been in government forever. And also, I think people have fear of repercussions and retaliation to their children or their families. I fully understand that this is a personnel issue and the details are not available, but from the general public's perspective, it seems like the district and those officials who may have known what was going on could or should have done better. Moving forward, because we need to go forward, I want to remind you that women and girls go through life fighting to be believed, and thoughts and feelings of females are often downplayed. This is true in multiple areas, including sexual assault or harassment, mental health, and even disabilities. There's a great book published in 2019 called Invisible Women by Caroline Perez that speaks to the horrendous gender gap in our society, the flaws in the societal system, which was built on the premise that, and I quote from the author, men should rule the world while women stay at home. Often we hear that if a woman or a girl is assaulted and not believed, it is because she was asking for it, she was dressed provocatively, or the person that did is such an outstanding person. Even if females are believed, they don't often get justice or proper help they deserve. For a long time and still today, women and girls are told, just be quiet, don't say anything. The system we're in makes women and girls not want to stand up for themselves because when they do, they're often the ones that are penalized. And if they do stand up for themselves, they're considered bossy, bitchy, aggressive, or know-it-alls. Believing women and girls.
Thank
Just
you.
finish up
Thanks
real
very
quickly.
much. You
Really,
know, we
it's
need to,
just
we need
part
to
of gender
stop
equity
you
that's
in
very
order to
important.
remain consistent with what we do.
I'll just remind
Thank
you of
you.
your culture of safety.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else present who wishes to address the board at this time? Right. Then I will read a comment sent in by Kent Taylor, who writes, I'm writing to register my dismay at two aspects of this. Oh, you know what? I'm going to wait. This has to do with a particular item before we take the vote. Am I correct, Ms. Dawson? Yeah. All right. Never mind. We'll get to that one in a little bit. All right. Thank you. If there's no one else, anyone on Zoom who wishes to address the board? No one? We will move on to our superintendent's updates. First, we have our business and budget update.
So yeah, just a couple of things to report tonight. Fiscal team is working on our unaudited actuals. So it's actually going to be, normally we bring it mid-September, but due to the fiscal issues we had with the County of Education this year, we will be bringing that to the October meeting. And that's a critical time for the board to see exactly how much we brought in and what we spent, right? That is basically closing out the books for the school year. But I did want to kind of give a highlight to our fiscal team for really just working hard, getting through everything that they've had to do, and really been spending a lot of time and a lot of extra time this year in particular to get that ready for the board. I spent a little time at San Luis High School today at the lunchroom, and we have a bit of a problem in SLO High. We have too many kids eating lunch. So it's a good problem to have. It's a positive problem to have, but despite that gigantic space and all that we have, there's a lot of kids. There are a lot of kids that are participating in lunch. So again, Aaron Primer, Mr. Bonin, Mr. Dickinson was there today. So there are a few things I'm going to be sharing with Mr. Dickinson, things we can do to support the food service staff. But again, it's a good problem to have, right? That many kids want to come through. One of the problems is a lot of kids want to come through twice. So we'll work on that together as we participate, right? Because it's important that everyone gets that first meal, right? That gets that piece of pizza they wanted that was on the calendar before they get a second piece. So we'll talk a little. Easy things to fix, right? But it was really, again, just great to see kind of the fruits of Measure D, the fruits of the labor, right, and the community support. I know we've seen it in the theater, we've seen it in our CT classes, we've seen it in our band room, all those things, but This was just another sign, and what a great thing that in the state of California, all kids get free meals, breakfast and lunch. I mean, it really is a great thing for all kids. And so the old stigma of who was in the lunch line, who wasn't, that's gone. Everybody is going in to eat. Like there's a lot of people. So it really is a great thing. And again, kudos to Erin and her team for putting out meals that the kids want to eat. So it's just a good thing.
Fullerton? Hi. It's your turn.
All right. Good evening, board. I'm going to move it here so you can see me better. We've been busy in educational services. The teacher TOSA team who was here last month speaking about all the back to school trainings have continued strong professional learning community activities with our English learner group, our MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support teachers, our AIT teachers. We're continuing some dual language immersion. We adopted the new program to help those students learn in Spanish language fluency. And we've been doing trainings in those as well. I've also had the opportunity to work closely with Christine and the foundation. We have lots going on talking about field trip grant opportunities. We're preparing and planning support for the benefit coming up, and lots of discussions around fiscal monetary systems, so that deciding how, when the foundation is supporting programs, how is that money going to move appropriately. And also talking about outdoor school planning support, equity, and moving along that line. We've continued great, awesome back to school nights at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school have continued on. We had our first traditional principal meetings of the year. Stephanie met with the elementary crew, and they were doing a looking back at what success they've had with back to school nights and looking forward about what's coming up and ways to increase alignment across our system. And Mr. O'Connor had an excellent secondary principals meeting. Some highlights for me was related to the dual language immersion framework that's going to help move our dual language programs up through middle and high school. There was a robust dialogue about that. Also, we talked about the new supplemental curriculum AR that was brought to you back in May and June, and how to help inform teachers about the processes around using supplemental materials appropriately in our classrooms. And then finally, I got to work with San Luis Obispo's County Office of Education a couple more times intensely at the Inclusion and Belonging meeting that Ms. Schaefer was at with me and some other members of our elementary and middle schools, and the Educational Services Council, which is the group of educational service leaders at our surrounding districts working together. And we were talking about chronic absenteeism and some other compliance related things. So we've been really busy in the Educational Services Department.
Mr. Pinkerton, we come back to you for our bond measures.
A little Measure D, Measure C. We're again completing Measure D at both comprehensive high schools right now. So kind of doing the landscaping in the front of the 100 building there is coming along, as well as at Morro Bay High School, finishing a huge back parking lot area that's happening. We will be putting together some dates really soon to do public tours, as well as kind of our final CBOC meeting for Measure D, and really just, walking people through, highlighting kind of what we were able to accomplish thanks to our community, right? So that's D wrapping up. C, we're in the heat of this phase one now. Mr. Bonin, myself, project managers, meeting with architects twice a week to go over all of the plans. So again, we have 10 elementary school sites, right? 2 middle schools and a continuation school we're focused on right now on those plans. And so we just put out, we have our design build for the modular units that we're looking at purchasing. That we'll get that bid in on Friday, so we'll know some pricing there and selection. And then we also did our first 2 leaseback walks. We had a really good turnout, so a lot of contractors, a lot of interest in the projects, which means that, normally when you have that, it means more competition, better price long-term for the district, right? And ultimately, hopefully able to do more and more projects using those funds. So we were excited about it. Excited about those that first two that came out, and we every couple of weeks we have two more until we have this first phase connected. Other than that, Mr. Bonnet and myself also took last week. We had the kind of half days in kindergarten and with the teachers, so it was a perfect time for us to get around to every single site, meet with the TK teachers, meet with the K teachers, talk about their classrooms, needs, wants, desires for their rooms and the playgrounds and storage space that they want, lots of storage, restroom facilities. So we had some really good conversations, kind of took all of that, put it in kind of a working doc, right? What we heard from each of the school sites, each of the teachers there. And so those will be some of the things that will be guiding us in these phases and plans, and really made some good changes over the past week, thanks to their, collaboration and sharing some ideas with us. So it was really good for us to get out and meet with staff, and we'll be following back up with them, of course, when we have better plans moving forward. But we're in the midst of the planning phase, right? So people it takes time. It takes time for the architects, designs, put that together. Then it goes to DSA, the Department of State Architects, for 6 months, and then shovels hit the ground construction. So spring, summer will be a very, very busy time around the school district, but all good work. Again, focused on those TKK rooms because of the programs expanding and the need for bigger classroom spaces with restrooms inside of them. And so we're excited about the expansion of that and again, what that is going to mean for kids and families long-term in our community.
Thank you. All right, next, in accordance with our change in the order of business, we will move to our discussion action items, and the first will be 9.04, the district-wide fencing project. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, so many years ago, I gave my safety presentation at our last board meeting. But we did a audit with Resolute and Associates of all of our campuses and our fencing, our perimeter fencing at all of our schools. It was part of our safety focus and what we needed to accomplish. Much of that work at the two comprehensive high schools was done with Measure D. And then we did a little bit here and there with district dollars kind of as we were moving through schools and doing some modernization. But it really wasn't until Measure C that we really could move forward with a big plan and kind of finishing up our schools and adding that extra layer of protection, right? Fences alone do not provide, perfect safety for all kids, right? But it is one of the measures that is something that's very recommended, right? In terms of having some type of a safety net with our schools, right? So it's one of many things that I outlined at our last meeting. So Mr. Bonnet and myself have spent a lot of time, Mr. Bonnet in particular, with his crew, going around to the school sites, examining the plans, looking at what we were doing. The schools in question that we're finishing up on are Los Osos Middle School, Laguna Middle School, Los Ranchos, Steele Smith, Stinsheimer, and Teach. And so we're just the two middle schools themselves are huge, huge campuses, right? In terms of that perimeter fencing. When we talk about the fencing too, for the board to know, again, perimeter is chain link for the most part around the outside of the school itself. And then along the front, we do ornamental fencing, right? So kind of the nicer, what you see in front of San Luis Obispo High School, Seal Smith, Bishop's Peak. So some of the schools where we've done work, right? So we were pleased with the 3 bids that we received. The contractor that we're asking the board to approve tonight, CMAR Construction, had the low bid. His subs that he's using are really some of the subs the other contractors were going to use as well, and contractors we've actually used in our district for other projects when it comes to fencing. So we feel good about it. As you can see, from a cost standpoint, it was really a positive outcome for us in terms of the bidding process. So that said, Mr. Bonnet is here. I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the fencing contract and bid. I will say that we did have some some issues when looking with fencing, and it's one of the reasons why it's taken this long to get back to the board. So we, at a couple of schools where we have neighborhoods up next to our schools, the thought of having another fence outside of the fence that they currently own was a change. And so we met with individuals. I think we worked out a great plan, C.L. Smith, at Laguna Middle School as well. Mr. Bonin in particular should be commended for meeting personally with several of the neighbors there to walk their particular area, to show them where we were at, why we were doing what we were doing, what we were doing. And so while that didn't make everyone happy because they wanted what they wanted type of thing, I think in the long run, we did try to make as best accommodations we could in terms of those facilities and where the fencing was going to go, those types of things to try to alleviate some of their concerns. And so a lot of conversations, a lot of walks, and really taking time. And so kudos to Chris and his team for doing that and going out there.
Thank you. I do have a public comment to read, but first I'd like to go to the public. Anyone here who would like to speak about this agenda topic, the fencing project? Right, then I'm going to read the public comment and then we'll have board discussion. This is from Kent Taylor. I'm writing to register my dismay at two aspects of this project and therefore the recommended contract award. The two issues are fairly summarized in the correspondence below between myself and Ryan Pinkerton. My specific concern is that the planned chain link fence for the western boundary of Laguna Middle School will be only 10 to 12 feet from our back fence. As an alternative, we propose to staff that it be located 18 feet to the east of the planned fence line, adjacent to the district's service road. This alternative was dismissed out of hand. In fact, during our on-site meeting with staff, we were advised that the project was already out to bid. Clearly, our request was not going to be seriously considered. I understand that as board members, you are loath to dive into the weeds on details like this. Therefore, while I would like to see the fence line adjustment described more fully in the correspondence below, I'm not expecting this to occur. What I think you should be concerned with is the district staff's approach to public information about this project for the neighborhoods around LMS. The first indication we had that something was imminent was seeing a property line marker outside our fence in July. I'm not aware of any announcement, any mailer to neighbors, any community meeting, or any press release being made about the district's planned fencing project. Instead, staff seems to have reached out only to adjacent neighbors who somehow learned of the district's plans and voiced their concerns. This does not seem like a best practices approach to broad neighborhood involvement or communications. If this was the approach the district used for other school neighborhoods, I'm afraid it has fallen short of being a good neighbor. Thank you for considering my views. All right. We'll open it up to the board. This is an action item, but Mr. Unger?
So, Mr. Pinkerton, I'm just curious about two things. First, when I think about Los Osos Middle School and I think about the fencing at Los Osos Middle School, how will we, and I suppose this is also applicable to Laguna as well, since the fields are used on the weekends heavily and after school by the public, how are we going to manage that? And how do we manage that with the physical design of the fences?
Yeah, so actually both those sites, we just purchased golf carts for the custodians to go around and open and close the fencing. Los Osos Middle School in particular is kind of a public pathway. So they have under the bridge that walks along the school there. So we've purposely put the fence on the eastern portion of that road so that can maintain a walkway for people as they travel up that road if they need to ride on the, but again, during the school day, those gates along that pathway will be locked. So once school starts, custodian goes around, locks them down. So we've added several pedestrian gates along the back area now, which is kind of the parking lot area, as well as pedestrian gates on the west side and double gates as well for service vehicles. So all of that kind of in terms of the planning and looking at the public, Laguna Middle School where Mr. Taylor lives, that the west side of that campus as well, we've left anywhere from 10 feet to 20 feet of space along that walkway, mainly so that those neighbors have access to the backside of their fence. I mean, we could have put it right up next to the fence, right? 1 foot next to it, but no, we spread it apart, spread it out. At some point, taking more of our facility and encroaching on our softball fields, our baseball fields, our soccer fields, those types of things, as well as there's infrastructure that runs under that area. And so in this case, where they wanted the fence would be us putting it over our infrastructure. So if we ever needed to do anything there, we'd have to tear the fence up, right? Well, that doesn't, while that would have been something that they wanted, it's really not in the district's interest, right? From that, so it's a balance with it, but we tried to, again, try to do what we could. I mean, we had everything from people asking for a wildlife corridor along Laguna Middle School, the back end, which is why we left the 10 to 20 foot area through there. As well as, a truck could come in, a truck could go by if they need to take some of their backyard, so lots of different things like that. But throughout looking at access points for community, students, were things that we looked at, again, service trucks, facilities, use, those types of things as well. We're all part of the plan and all part of what, again, the reason why this probably took 4 or 5 extra months, because we got a lot of public input and we went back and we changed the plan and we changed it again based on what we heard and what we looked at, and we walked aside and met with individuals personally, including Mr. Taylor, and walked them through what we were doing and why we were doing it and how we were doing. And again, for the most part, most people after those conversations were great and thanked Mr. Bonnet for being there and letting them know what was happening and why it was happening. And unfortunately, there's 1 or 2 that would like it different.
Thank you.
Mr. Banfield?
So that south fence that goes along the track, that's going to be raised
Yes.
at Loams.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
All the way around the entire campus now.
Right.
Because there's no fencing that goes to the east of the campus either, right? So I mean, that campus is, along with Laguna Middle School, they're wide open.
I know.
Yeah.
We've chased many a ball out there
Yeah.
before, but aside from the fence, do we have plans to pave that south parking lot ever at Loams?
It's actually not our property.
I was wondering that.
Yeah, that's
That is
a
ours.
it's a county lot there.
That's why. Okay.
So again, our facilities, as the board knows, they're public facilities at nights, at weekends. So we do, as soon as school's open, we open everything up, right? We have facility use permits, those types of things at all of our sites. So we took that into consideration when putting these fences in, and to ensure that we have those pedestrian access ways, those types of things when they are open.
Now I know of people that like to run that track early in the morning. Are they going to be able to do that?
It's open. So we don't, once the school bell rings and school has begun, right? Because we've got to let the kids in. The custodian will go around and will lock all of the gates around the perimeter of the campus. So once school starts, there's one entrance exit point for the public. Of course, staff have keys. There's disabled access bars and other places where staff and kids can get off of the campus. But in terms of where we want the public to enter the campus, it's one point.
Mr. Clausen?
In terms of the public feedback that maybe isn't in full agreement with the final plan, is it mostly related to location of fences, or is it related to a number of accessibility points to the properties?
It's individuals with current houses next to the school.
So, it's
So
really,
they have a fence and they don't understand why we want to put a fence up.
so is there concern that they don't have a gate nearby to get into the property because they like to use it, or is it they just don't want a fence
They just
close
don't-
to their property?
They don't want to see a fence.
Okay. And so to
And
be
we have
further
to put
away,
access points.
okay, so for us to be
accommodate-
further away from their fence, we'd essentially have to just cede property that is ours by putting it on the other side of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and I'd just like to indicate that I spent some time with Mr. Bonin and went to Laguna Middle School. He was kind enough to show me the fence line as originally proposed and where it's moved, and we did the same thing at a couple of other sites. But the original site, it's my
El original.
was moved farther away in order to kind of accommodate the wishes of the neighbors without encroaching on the property or the pathway that we need for our vehicles, to work vehicles and mowers and things like that to access. So I appreciate it. Certainly helped me to have a kind of
Eso,
feet on the ground kind of view of what it looked like.
And again, we added, Mr. Clausen too, we did add extra pedestrian gates. Because a lot of those neighbors are used to being able to use the fields and use the space. So we get that. And so we actually put in, after meeting with some parents too, added a couple extra gates.
That's where my question was going.
Yeah.
If we could address that through more accessibility,
Yeah.
that seems like
We
a good
tried.
outcome, but it sounds like you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Mrs. Roger.
Hi, thank you. Mr. Pinkerton, when you talk about moving the fence at Laguna Middle School to accommodate the neighbors and setting that fence back onto our property, I don't think it's clear to the public when you talk about our infrastructure. What you're referring to is that we would then be placing fencing over gas lines and other utilities that it is likely we will need to access in the future.
That is true.
Okay. And then I'm wondering, did we do a rough estimate of what we thought this fencing would cost? And I'm wondering how the low bid came in, the bid to estimate.
Our estimate at the time was approximately $2 million for this bid.
Excellent.
So this
That's
was
excellent. Thank
much
you very
more
much.
than had been predicted.
Mr. Buckman. Mrs. Roger, were you done?
Yes, I was. Thank you.
Mr. Buckman.
Thanks, Ryan. And hi, Chris. Thank you very much. A lot of good public outreach. So pretty much my standard question, but I refined it. So when we look at fencing, we're not only keeping the public out, but sometimes we're keeping the students in. And during a crisis, sometimes it's best to get the students off. So the question I have is there some kind of ratio for the number of gates to the number of students, or did we get Resolute help us plan for the placement of what I'm going to call exits?
So DSA is going to have disabled access gates in terms of push bar gates, those types of things. I don't know that there's a particular number of gates for a size of school. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of gates.
Okay.
And especially the two middle schools in particular, because of the weekend and other uses, there's a lot of access points for people to get out. And the biggest thing for us is really teachers with keys. So they have the ability to take their class if they're on the grass area or one of the noon duty or whatever, and take kids off the campus, right? If there was a lockdown or some type of intruder on campus.
So then I guess the safety plans will be updated to include
new maps
and all that.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we just had a recent incident, Los Osos Valley Road, right? We had a shooting at Panda Express. Right after that, I'm getting emails. Hey, when's that fencing going up? What's going on? Right. So I know we had a few neighbors. Again, I wish we could have. I mean, we've met with Mr. Taylor. We wanted to work out something that worked for everyone, right? We try to do that as much as possible. But I will tell you that our parents, our kids, they want perimeter fencing around our campuses, right? The security and safety aspect. And it's something I've heard for the past 5 years as we've talked about safety and security on campus. So I think this is it is a good, thing for us to move forward with as a district.
Anything else? Right, this is an action item.
I'd like to move approval of the bids. Is it CMAR construction, 1.15 million.
I'd like to second that.
Right, Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield, Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Unger.
Yes.
I am a yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will get back on track here. 9.01, the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress Results.
Just a microphone. I'm not as tall as Mr. Pinkerton. So good evening, board. Mrs. Shepard and myself are here this evening to discuss with you last spring's results with regard to the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, oftentimes referred to as CASP, but I wanted to make sure that you had an introduction to the acronym. If you recall, CASP was introduced in January 2014. It replaced the old previous STAR system. And this evening, we're going to review our preliminary results that we received with regard to CASP. Specifically, we're going to focus on English language arts, we're going to focus on mathematics, and we're going to focus on science. As you can see, the CASP assessments are computer adaptive. And as I said before, the results are preliminary, and we'll have our final results hopefully in mid-October at some point. And just a quick reminder that when we're talking about our results, we're talking about scale scores, and we're talking about measurements. A lot of times we'll hear a student may have scored a 1, which means standard not met. We'll reference perhaps a score of 2, standard nearly met. Our focus this evening will be around students who meet or score a 3, which demonstrates standard met, or 4, which means standard exceeded. So when we talk about proficiency this evening, we're talking about those students either district-wide or at a specific school site, whether elementary, middle, or high school, that speaks to their proficiency, either a 3 or a 4 on the CASP.
Good evening. Stephanie Shepard, Director of Elementary Learning and Achievement. And I'm going to dive in with a look at our ELA scores. So what you're going to see and hear tonight are a lot of celebrations. And I'll also be sharing some areas and pointing out things that we want to examine more closely as the preliminary results are finalized. So up here, you'll see ELA referencing English language arts, and this is showing our growth over a 3-year period of time. The goldenrod being the most recent. So a celebration is that when we look at the all collective body of students that are being tested, is that we see that lovely upward trend. That's where the direction that we want to see things going in. We want to see that growth. And at the same time, when we start to disaggregate the data a little bit into our socioeconomically disadvantaged students in comparison to our non-socioeconomically disadvantaged students, you can see that our non-SED students are maintaining that very high level of proficiency, while our SED students had a dip this last year. When we take a look further, we've rolled forward that all group again on your far left as you're looking at the data, and we can see that upward trend. Our students with disabilities is what SWD stands for. You can see that we maintained that same level of proficiency from the prior year. Our students who have been reclassified as fluent English proficient, they've moved out of that English learner category. We saw a dip in that category as well. And with our English language learners, you can see that we have a huge celebration there where those students over the prior 2 years made gains of 9 percentage points, which is outstanding.
When we dive in just to the elementary English language arts proficiency data, you'll see a lot of yellow highlights on this slide, and that's to point out many of those celebrations. So I'm going to draw your eye over to the far right-hand column where it says pre-COVID 2019 ELA. We're anchoring ourselves in that data and using that as a baseline, which we want to again match and or exceed. And the two schools that you'll see highlighted in yellow under that column, they have met or exceeded their pre-COVID data. So a huge celebration there. And then many schools are highlighted on the overall slide because they're making, we were shooting for 5% growth, and all of the schools that are highlighted yellow there exceeded that 5% growth. Two of our schools were able to achieve 10 or 12% gains. And moving into secondary, we have more celebrations here. You can see that we have two secondary schools that far exceeded their pre-COVID achievement levels. And then we have three schools respectively who are achieving 5%, 18%, and 10% growth since 2001.
And to pick up the conversation pertaining to math, and again, picking up where Stephanie left off, if you're looking at that incremental growth over this 3-year comparison district-wide, you can see on the far right, our math district-wide has gone from 56 to 57% proficient. We have a slight dip in our SED district-wide and a slight dip in our non-SED district-wide. And then as we go into our next groups, significant subgroups, we're looking at our SWD, our students with disabilities again. Our RFEP, our reclassified fluent English proficiency students in mathematics have saw an increase. At the same time, our EL students have seen an increase in their proficiency with regard to math district-wide. So celebrations all the way around for our staff, our students, for all of our systems of intervention that we're putting in place to try and get back to those places where we were at before COVID. And then when we start to call out individual elementary sites, as Stephanie talked about, we're highlighting many, many of our elementary schools that over a 2-year cycle from 20 to 21 and 22 to 23, we're seeing growth, both significant growth over 5% at the school site level. And then two specific schools we'd like to draw your attention to at the elementary level. You're seeing Baywood and Smith achieving above pre-COVID levels, which is a testament to the work that's going on at both of those specific elementary sites. And then at the secondary level, again, we're seeing tremendous growth at several of our secondary sites. And I want to give a shout out to the work at Morro Bay High School and the work of Mr. Scaldi and his team to see that our growth at Morro Bay High now exceeds our pre-COVID level, which is tremendous.
And here we see our California science test data. And this is, again, a 3-year comparison. And we love those lovely upward trends that you're seeing on all of the bar graphs. So diving into a comparison here with our socioeconomically disadvantaged and non-SED students, you can see that we maintain proficiency with our SED population, and we saw some 2 percentage points worth of growth in the non-SED. And then taking a look at our students with disabilities, we see that we have 7 percentage points gains there. So that's fantastic. Our students that have been reclassified as fluent English proficient, a huge amount of growth. We see 15 percentage points. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Yeah, my question is, I understand the focus on growth. What do we see as actually the levels that are good absolute numbers to be targeting to begin with? So like if we see a growth from 30 to 33% or 70 to 73%, are there specific levels of proficiency we want to see to begin with before we talk about growth? Or how do we put these numbers in context is maybe a question. And I know you have perspective maybe from some other geographies. So we'd just love to know
Yeah, that's a great
How do we
question.
interpret these numbers at an absolute level, not just a growth in COVID, pre-COVID?
I would say utilizing our pre-COVID data is probably our best anchor that we can utilize to then determine, okay, so this was before the pandemic and before we had students that had incredibly vastly different experiences with learning during that closure time and then online time. And so I would say the pre-COVID data for our school district is probably the most important. What we'll be looking at once the state releases all of the scores across various districts and across the state, then we can look at some of that comparison data. And I believe we're looking at doing that in mid-October. And then we can kind of see how are we doing in comparison to surrounding school districts and those further afield. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I'm newer to the school board, so I ask probably more entry level questions. I mean, I guess in the context of any metrics like this I would have in other areas of my life, I would have goals and targets, and they wouldn't just be to improve. They would be, we want to be at 70 or 80 or 90% or some number. And I'm just curious if we have that.
I would say over time, we want to meet our students where they're at. And so really looking at growth over time in the manner that we're doing right now is it's incredibly important because we want to ensure that our students are not just hitting a benchmark, but we want to make sure that as we're looking at all of these subgroups, that over time they're improving, that we're closing that achievement gap, because that's ultimately what we want. We want all of our students learning at the highest levels, not just our students who aren't qualifying for our various subgroups. So in terms of goals, I think we would say we want all of our students achieving. We want 100% proficiency.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to take a stab at that question. I don't want to scare people, but in this district, I believe a reasonable target for ELA and math for our non-SED population should be around 80%. 80% is where I think we belong once we get our system strong enough, which include adoptions that align to the standards, and we get our staff properly trained. I believe 80% proficient or exceeding proficiency is a reasonable target for our district. I really do. And that is in both ELA and math. The real question after that is, well, what about the gap between, so it's the equity question. So what about the gap between the non-SED and the SED? And I would argue it shouldn't be any more than 15%. Okay? In my opinion, and that's in my mind playing into poverty. That's identifying our barriers within our system. So if the non-SED is at 80, then I think our SED population should be somewhere around 65, maybe even 70% on average. And I do think those are attainable. I really do. And then once you get to those levels, I really believe incremental progress, once you get to that level, incremental progress of 1, 2, 3% annually will reveal a district that starts looking like an amazing place of achievement and excellence. And we're not there yet because I don't believe our curriculum has caught up yet to the standards, and I don't believe our instructional methodologies are there in alignment with the curriculum, as well as our assessments. I don't think our assessments are tuned to what the kids are being assessed on. I think the closest measure we can get is when you look at the AP exams and you look at some of the, well, I will say prior to them doing away with SAT and ACT, that was a better indication. I personally think within 5 years, we can reasonably see, especially since we've adopted our curriculum at the secondary level, and we're just about to adopt an ELA curriculum at the elementary level, along with relooking at the new math frameworks. I think we can, within 5 years, expect to see numbers like I just mentioned. And I'm sticking to it. I believe we can do it. I really do.
I have Mrs. Hinton and Mr. Buckman and Mr. Unger.
Hi. Well, Dr. Prater's answer or explanation pretty much answers my question. And that was, and what I heard you saying, Dr. Prater, was that the measurements are not measuring what the students are being taught exactly. And so if that's the case, then that might explain why some of our non-Title I schools are not seeing as much improvement as you might expect. I was wondering if the conversation could go towards speculation on that. But you just said it, I think, Dr. Prater, that perhaps things are not being measured in an exact way for what the students are learning.
Yeah, back in the day, we spent a lot of time, and I mean like 20 years ago, in my former school district, we spent a whole lot of time on curriculum coherence, instructional coherence, and assessment coherence. It is a big lift. It takes a lot of work. I think we're primed to do that work. I think we have really passionate teachers. I think we have lots of potential and skill. I just don't think we're aligned to those things that will reveal these scores. I've been looking up and down the state at various districts, and we actually fare quite well across the state, but I know we can do much better. I just know we can with some really strategic shifts in the way we do things, and curriculum coherence, assessment coherence, alignment is going to make a big difference. We already started this this year at Pacheco and Baywood with our Spanish language arts curriculum, which has ELD embedded instruction. So you're going to be able to see huge differences coming our way in our DLI programs just by us adhering to that curriculum. So for me, I think you're going to see these results. And remember, this is just one indicator of many about a school district success. But this is an important one, especially when you start looking at elements of equity and addressing generational poverty, all of those things. We can do more, and we should do more, and I expect it.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. So I guess I have, in terms of context, I thought that was a great term. We know we have some comparable districts in the state. I don't know if their scores and these numbers are available yet to be shared.
Mid-October, and we'll be coming back to present at that point.
And then also the context to the state in general would be.
Yes,
okay,
same
great.
time frame.
All right. And then I guess then when we look at SED and non-SED, I don't remember. So our SED population is greater than our no. So it's a lot less. And so does that mathematically explain? Sorry, you know where I'm headed.
Yeah, actually, we track those numbers as well. So our SED population last go around was approximately 1,661. That was our SED population. Actually, that was our SED population in 21. And in 22, the previous was like 1,300. So we actually went down in our SED population, and we actually increased in our non-SED population almost by 300 students district-wide that were assessed.
Okay. And so I guess if you're not pulling from as big a pool, then I wonder if that affects the percentage. So, I mean.
That is correct.
Okay. And so then this, okay. I just get frustrated sometimes. The other thing that I'm seeing is we took the two highest, the what is it, the 3 and the 4 on that chart, and we're combining those to make these numbers. And so if we looked at just the 3, is that a larger group than I have the numbers right, than the 4? So sometimes, I mean, I'm not sure why we end up combining groups to give us this kind of number.
The reason why we combine the 3s and the 4s is because the district recognizes and the state recognizes those are our proficiency rates because you've met the standard and you've exceeded the standard. It's like saying you made 70% or you made 80%. Well, 70% is the benchmark 80% is above the benchmark, hence the reason why we combine them
So
for
if-
efficiency.
And so if we're looking for proficient, I'm just interested in what the number would look like if it was just the kids that are meeting the standard as opposed to those kids that are just super exceeding it and sort of dragging this number up. And so I don't expect an answer tonight, but it's just something that I think about, why combining those two changes the look of this number. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Buckman, you can, I was spent a good chunk of my day looking at the EdSource data profile from last year's, and what you can, on that particular website, you can click on, you have two choices. You can do 2 data sets, which means proficient or exceeds, and not exceeds or is approaching proficiency. So you get those 4 groups combined into 2, and which is what you're seeing. But you can also click on a button and it'll break it into 4 groups. And what's interesting, because I looked at this, is it doesn't really change the proficient or exceed numbers, because those are what they are. But what's interesting in our case is that the band that says approaching standard is the biggest. So in other words, that's the sweet spot for us. Those kiddos that are in that band, that's where our MTSS model comes in. That's where our engagement comes in. That if you can move those kids over, sometimes it's just getting 1 or 2 problems right, changes the whole dynamic. And so when you look at it through that lens, it reveals sort of an interesting story about our kids that are just caught in that second band, which is approaching standard. How do you get them nudged over? And that's part of our work. And we are looking at that, but not necessarily tonight. Okay.
One thing I was curious about was pretty much the significant difference, but not in the statistical sense, but between our CAS scores and our other scores. I'm looking at the EL and seeing 313, and our students with disabilities, of course, but I'm really curious, what is it that's so different about the CAS part of the test and the math part of the test and the ELA part of the test, and how can we address those issues? Because obviously the science piece is really important.
Excuse me, I'm going to field this one. I think that's a great question, Chris. And that trend of ELA being highest, math, and then science being below from my work in other places, and I'm sure Stephanie in Washington, it is a pretty traditional mark, English language arts being the highest. But part of it is we need to really look carefully, since schools have a fixed amount of time resource, we need to look very carefully about how we're using that time to our biggest advantage. And it's not to say that we want to not value things that are not on the state assessments, and we don't want to kill children with English language arts and math all day long. However, we do need to ensure that we're using every minute as wisely as we can with first best instruction, including time for science and time for social studies, really rigorously throughout the elementary years. So that's going to be part of the upcoming work that Stephanie and Leslie and I are going to work.
And so sort of to think about that, years ago, we had a discussion about computer science and whether it needed to be a standalone requirement for high school graduation. And my argument was no, that it shouldn't be, that would just take away an elective from our high school students. However, what we should be doing is coordinating those two things together so that we're, so computer science is part of our children's everyday experience. And I'm wondering if we're going to at some point be able to move the boat a little bit more so that science and other things are pieces of the math expectations we have, because obviously science is a lot to do with math, as well as the English language arts piece of it. Reading scientific journals. I don't expect our students to read scientific journals except in maybe high school classes, but you know what I'm saying. There must be ways that we can have those things work together so that we get some sort of coherence, which I think is what you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, thanks. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris. I actually thought we were trying to do that. I know when you study for the GED, you have one class that's English, language arts, and history, and it's taught combined. And then the second evening, this year Wednesdays, it's science, math that are combined. And it seems that approach works really well. So towards Chris's point, I think we may have a model for that. And quite honestly, I thought we had already headed down that road, but there is a model for it out there.
Well, one of the things, especially at the secondary level, we have to remember is the credentialing of the instructor as well, and the ability of the instructor to have the authorization to be able to teach across subject areas. That's something we always have to keep in mind as well.
I'll also add that our new curriculums that sorry, Leslie, the new curricula that we're piloting, many of them, well, the 3 that we're piloting have embedded additional doses of texts that are related to social sciences as well as just science in general. So the students will get an additional dose in addition to just that standalone time that is just social studies traditionally. A few more celebrations as we look at the CAST data up on the screen here. You'll see that we have 2 elementary schools that far exceeded their pre-COVID 2019 scores in science. And most of our schools are highlighted as having achieved many more percentage points than just the 5% that we were shooting for. We have a few schools on there that you'll see that exceeded even a 20% marker of achievement. And in 8th grade, again, more celebration here as we look at 3 of the schools that went above and beyond their pre-COVID scores and continue to show outstanding growth, 18% as well as 12% on there.
And then in conclusion, we're drawing some conclusions here and some celebrations for you to share and to see. When we constantly reference that cycle, we're talking about that 2021 versus the 22-23. We're talking, Mr. Clausener, about the significant or statistically significant increase of 5% or more district-wide. And then we're trying to call out those specific school sites that have raised the bar and are moving towards those pre-COVID levels, as well as either district or school sites that are closing that gap, achievement gap, 5% or more for specific subgroups that we've mentioned throughout. And then finally, the celebration on the left-hand side, as you look at the bottom, we're seeing growth at the vast majority of our schools, which is a really positive trend, is a real celebration for our students and our staff as we come back out of COVID. And our work that we still need to do, we need to make sure that we are continuing this work across all of the grade levels and to really refine our systems of practice and our first best instruction to meet the needs of our students so that hopefully in a year from now, we'll be able to report even greater outcomes.
Yeah, just so this is a little off topic, but I know there's a state exam that the kids actually use a Chromebook to take the exam.
That's correct.
And this is not that.
These are those assessments.
These tests. So
yeah.
And science and so both of these, all of these subjects covers, these are the ones. So when we look at those exams, as opposed to any other state monitoring, are there others where they're still doing pen and pencil? Just these are the only,
no,
okay.
These are all computer assisted.
Yeah, thanks.
Anything else? Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Yeah, this is always interesting. Thanks. All right, we are on to 9.02 Family Guide Update. Oh, yes, we can go to the public. No, we can't respond, but we can listen to your question.
Definitely, I want to bring this up. Having a child.
We need your name, please. Your name.
Angela, right? So having a child that is disabled,
I have always been suggested to opt him out, and I have 4 grown children that always did these testing, but I've always had the suggestion to opt my son out of these tests. So I'd like to know the number of students that are disabled that are participating as well, not just the statistics that we have. And then I also don't like the padding them by combining them because that's basic math. We need to actually know where we're at so that we know where we can build with all of our children across the board. But specifically for my needs as a parent, I would like to know what the percentage is of children that are disabled that are participating in these tests.
Thank you.
Janet, do you by chance have that number that we can get later?
Okay, a couple different things here. We as a district get dinged anytime our participation rate is less than 95%. So if we have more than 5% of our students who opt out and don't take the assessment, we get dinged. I do not believe, I need to check for this year to see if we were dinged this year for that. I can't answer that for you right now, but I can get you that information. Also, some of our students take the California Alternate Assessment, which is different than the CASP assessment. So this would be looking at students that were taking the CASP, not the California Alternative Assessment.
Thank you. And then, Ms. Wright, if maybe you and Ms. Gu could exchange information. Okay, all right, thank you.
And Ms. Shepherd, just so for everyone in the audience too, you can go to the CASP. So Janet, you can also go to the CASP website where they have all the state results, and you can pull up all types of kids, EL, students with disabilities, and it actually has all of the data that Ms. Wright asked for is right on the website, the state website, San Luis Coastal, and it'll show you the numbers, the number of kids that have disabilities, the number of kids who actually tested, and then what those results are. It's all right there.
Thank you. Right. Were anyone else from the public wishing to comment on our topic we just had with the CASP results? Moving on, thank you to our family guides.
Good evening again. I am here to celebrate the San Luis Coastal Family Guides. Board members, you have a copy in front of you of 5th grade, and also audience members can grab a copy over on the table. The family guides are printed in English and Spanish for all of our community members. And I first want to recognize that I am here today representing the good work of Jeff Martin, who couldn't be with us this evening. And he also had the help of Jessica Jurek, one of our teachers that was doing work on making this project be successful. But I wanted to first celebrate why these family guides are so important. And I have a quote here from the Partners in Education Family School Partnerships. But we all know the critical role that families and parents play in the success of our students. So to speak, many hands make light work. And you see in the data that we were just reviewing, the standards of learning in California for our young students are very high and very challenging. And school districts and teachers alone can't do it by ourselves. And we need to partner along with our families. And it's our hope that with family participation, we can accomplish more. So what are the family guides? The family guides have listed on the very front page in the 4 core subject areas of language arts, math, science, and history, technology, science, social science. These are the things that are through lines throughout every grade level a student is in our schools, K through 12. All students do these things. But as you turn to the inside pages of the document, you'll see the essential learning standards that have been called out specific to that grade level. These are the most important concepts, knowledge, and skills that they need to learn, for example, in this time in 5th grade. not only are we trying to kind of unpack what the California state has said our students are required to learn at each grade level, we've included talking points for families, which tells them questions to ask their that parents can ask their children's teachers, and also questions that parents can ask their own children about the learning topics. And then we've also included everyday learning in the bottom right-hand corner here on the screen, everyday learning activities. So these are things that are very accessible for families to do at home with their children to reinforce the learning topics at hand. We also want to be sure that these family guides are why do we care? Why are they important? And we know that and have heard that parents and caregivers want to help their children, but they sometimes don't know where to start. So this is an easy, more direct way to communicate what the learning expectations are for each grade level. They're supposed to try and take the mystery out of what parents could and should and would be doing with their students or their children at home to make their time together most effective for learning. So academic success for those of our students that are most successful in our systems, they kind of have to have this solid foundation of the teachers and the school supporting academic success. Parents and families are clear what academic success looks like, and the students themselves fully understand and can name and describe what academic success looks like. Creating these family guides has been quite a process and involved many, many stakeholder groups. I want to highlight for you that it was more than a year in the making. It began with principals, and then in December, we invited teachers to weigh in on what they felt the most important learning topics were. We also were able to share with parent groups to get their feedback and ideas for revisions on how to make it better. In June, we were working on translation into Spanish so that all of our families could read and understand. And then finally, we published and printed copies in July that were distributed earlier this year in August. Both digitally, they were shared through Parent Square with all families in our district. And then at back to school nights, I know the principals also mentioned the family guides. And these paper copies should have been sent home with every child in our district for the grade level that they are. I just wanted you to get to see a peek inside of what it actually looks like, but you have the copy with you. We also have included the district's vision, mission, a picture of all of our school sites to make it feel more inclusive, and our ever important instructional calendar to help families be aware of upcoming breaks in the holiday year, to help children attend school regularly, because we know regular attendance is really critical to helping students succeed and feel like they belong at school. So here are a few comments we wanted to share with you. This is early feedback from families at Teach, Baywood, and Los Ranchos, and what they appreciate about the family guides. I'll give you a second to read. And most importantly, having the family guides and not doing anything with them would not ensure great success. So the ways our staff can use these family guides is it can help lead dialogue within our PLCs and teacher groups about what is the content that's most important and needing to be reviewed over and over again. It's a way to frame family conversations anytime we have parents on campus to talk at back to school night, parent-teacher conferences, and student success individual student need meetings. We are still developing a dual language immersion companion document to send out to our Baywood and Pacheco families that would include the Spanish language literacy that those children are also learning within their time with us. And we want parents to have conversation starters with teachers and to use with their own children, and give them some ideas about easy things they can do at home to help cement the learning that we do here at school each day. and a look into the future. We know it is wonderful that these have been developed, but these are going to be living, breathing documents. And we welcome feedback from teachers and families and staff alike to find out which pieces are helpful, which pieces are not helpful, and how we can make them better moving forward. And so we will plan to revise these family guides in the springtime so that new and improved family guides will be given out next August. That is the end of my presentation. What questions do you have?
First, I'd like to go to the public, see if anyone from the public would like to address the board on this issue. No one here, anyone on Zoom? No. All right, then I understand we have Mrs. Hinton followed by Mr. Banfield.
Yes, it's truly a remarkable way of communicating with the parents that has been developed here. A lot of hard work has gone into it, and it's wonderful. It's being well received, and I just congratulate everybody who was able to participate in forming it. And you know, the culture of care is a very important part of our curriculum now. And I'm wondering if, since it's a living, breathing document, if it could be, the culture of care could be explained to parents on this guide somehow.
I think that absolutely can be something that the revision group considers, and how best to move forward. That's a great suggestion.
Thanks.
Mr. Banfield.
Generally, do teachers still send little newsletters home? Are they encouraged to do that still?
Yes, for sure.
Well, what would it be for a teacher to, is this document available as a PDF and a
Yes,
paste?
it is posted on our websites. It is in a Google, we have Google Drive copies of these documents that they all can have access to.
Well, I'm just wondering what would it be for, once a month, a teacher to highlight something from the guide and hey, by the way, do you remember seeing this? And blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that would be the intention of this hope, my hope, because we sent these out electronically to all the families in the summer. And then we provided hard copies to them at back to school night or in the first week or so of school. And what I can tell you is I think it's been like most new attempts at trying something new. It's met with some resistance and some hesitation. And so our focus is to show working models on how teachers can use this, how principals can use this to strengthen relationships with parents, because parents are key partners in their children's development. But the hard part, traditionally, especially in California, you can't get anything like this on the California Department of Education website. It doesn't exist. It's unfortunate, but it's a very difficult. It's difficult in California to get this level of clarity, which is why we worked on it, because I think parents are kind of left to their own devices to try to figure out what exactly is my child learning in this grade level this year. And then you have an informed parent as opposed to a congenial, well-intentioned, nice parent. They're different. And out of respect for families, I think we have to inform them. And out of respect for teachers, I think we need to support them in what they're teaching. And I think the best way to do it is through that stool analogy. Yeah, I think an effective tool for a teacher would be on a weekly or maybe monthly basis, say, here's what we covered this month in these key areas. And please, here might be some questions you can ask your children at home. I'm excited for this. I really am. I think it's a long time coming.
Well, I think even instructionally as an educator myself, it would be very helpful as a fifth grade teacher to post up the list. And as your class covers each one of those things, you start highlighting it yellow. And as the year progresses on, the children will see that, oh, we've already learned half of the things on this list. So it has a visual representation of the learning and work that they have done and can be celebrated. So it's great for parents to understand what students are learning, and it's really super important for students to be able to express what they learned.
I can only imagine that there will be some households where the document will be set aside and forgot. So, you know.
I just wanted to, like with some of Rob's, it's a beautiful document. A lot of work has gone into it. I like the fact that there's on the cover, there's these big general things that people will see first and they can use them for everything, but it looks like those are going to be across the grades. And so parents will get that from year after year. I'm really impressed, and I'd like to Mr. Banfield's comment about somehow send people back to the document throughout the year is brilliant. And I hope that it's used, because that may mean that it isn't set aside. Good idea, Rob.
Thank you. I would request that you express our deep appreciation to Mr. Martin for his work on this. I know he spent a lot of time on it, and it's been a goal that is fulfilled. So
I would be happy to and honored to.
So thank you. Yeah. All right. Our next item is our report with regard to the foundation.
I get set up here. Take a moment and go off script and say, as a new district parent, just how much I have enjoyed the Family Guide. And I have not set it aside. In fact, it is on my dining room table, and I reference it quite often. And so, just from a parent perspective, I say how much I appreciate it.
Christine, could you speak up just a little bit also, please?
Yes, I'll get right up to the mic. Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I am excited to be here and share with you an update on the work of the foundation. As I was preparing this, I was thinking about the fact that we have two relatively new school board members that have not been here for one of the comprehensive foundation updates before. And so I thought I would start by actually kind of going back to the beginning and doing a little bit of a nuts and bolts review about the foundation. So just the history of how we were formed, you'll remember that kind of the big event was the announced closure of Diablo. So it was in 2016 that the conversations about creating an education foundation were kind of re-stimulated. It was something that the district had talked about for a while, but these conversations began in earnest back in 2016. And over the following years, there was work here at the district level to go through the process of setting up the 501c3, negotiating with PG&E, securing the funding through SB 1090. That then led to the recruitment of our founding board. We have some members of our founding board here with us tonight. And then formalizing the relationship between the foundation district, and then we began in earnest in 2019, which means this year marks our 5-year anniversary. We are really proud of the model that was created and the foresight that the district had when the foundation was established to set it up the way that you did. It is actually quite an innovative model for how the district works with the foundation. It's not a model that we see in many other communities because it is an integrated partnership. And even though the foundation is an independent 501c3 with a separate governing board, we have this cross-pollination between the two entities that creates a true partnership relationship and really allows us to do more impactful work on behalf of kids. You know me, we are a team now of two, myself as the executive director, and then this year we hired on the foundation side, we hired Mary Kelting, who is our director of strategic initiatives. Mary comes to us from a long tenure out at Cal Poly, where she worked in the College of Business as a development director. So she was doing fundraising and a lot of corporate relations. She had previously been doing the fundraising work for the formation, launch, and growth of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. She's also a district parent from Los Osos, 2 kids in the schools. And so she's got a lot of passion for the work that we're doing, and we're excited to have her. The leadership of the foundation board, as I mentioned, we are an independent governing board, and we have recruited board members from across the community to represent parents, alumni, civic leaders, business leaders. We also have been really intentional in having district representation on our board. And so as we've gone through kind of a refreshing of our board membership this year, we've been very excited to welcome some new board members from the district. We have a new school board liaison, Chris Unger. You'll remember Catherine Eisendrath-Rogers was the first board liaison. She was just so integral in helping establish the foundation, set the tone for the relationship. And now we're delighted to welcome Chris and benefit from his insights on the board. We also have Lisa Yamashita. Stephanie Shepard has been invited and hasn't gotten back to me with a yes, but I'm going to take it as a yes. And then I'm really excited to be welcoming Janet Gould as well. And I think Janet is going to be just such a powerful voice for helping us think through how to be really inclusive in the work that we're doing and make sure that we're thinking broadly about individual students and creating opportunities for students with differentiated learning styles and needs, and that we're being really creative in how we are serving and reaching kids. So you'll remember that when the foundation was set up, because of SB 1090, we started with a $10 million endowment. This is very, very unique for an organization like ours. That endowment was paid out from PG&E over a 4-year series of installment payments. So it was, I believe, last year that we received the final installment payment and set up that $10 million endowment. All of those dollars were coming in when the market was really strong. We were thankful for that. But we had the decision as a board, because it was a board-created endowment, it's called a quasi-endowment, which means it's actually governed by the bylaws and the policies of the foundation board itself. So we had a lot of discretion over how to set up the management and administration of that endowment. And we took a very, very conservative approach, more conservative than what's required by UPNIFA, which are the regulations that govern endowments. So what we said is that we're only going to spend from the growth after we adjust for inflation, which didn't seem terribly conservative when the market was really strong and inflation was really low. We ran a bunch of models and said, what's our worst case scenario? We looked back over 50 years of market performance and thought, boy, it's very low likelihood that we would get a down market and really high inflation for a sustained period of time. Well, we did. And so we were thankful that in those years when the market was very strong and we had a lot of available dollars to spend out of the endowment, our board exercised real restraint. And rather than spending all of the available dollars, what we did was we spent a limited percentage of those available dollars, and we took the balance and either reinvested it or put it into cash reserve. And our goal was to make sure that we had 2 years of operating a budget in cash reserve. And I just compliment the foundation board for their foresight and their prudence in setting up that reserve, because now we are in a no spend period because of the market conditions. So we have really, I think, taken a prudent approach to the management of the endowment. And that's born out of our priority that we want to see the endowment be an asset for long-term growth and really preserve and grow that capital. And so the way that the foundation board has viewed the endowment is to cover our operating expenses primarily and really build and grow a program based on our ability to engage the community and fundraise. And so we have funded almost all of our program activities exclusively out of community donations. So the status of the endowment as of the end of last month, that 10 million is down to 9.5. If you look at the formula for when we'll be able to spend again based on inflation, we're going to need to see that endowment get up over $11 million. So we are in a no spend period for probably the next year or so, depending on what the market is doing, and we're ready for that. The cash reserve that I mentioned before, we saw the market sort of downturn coming, and so we actually pulled back on some of our spending last year. So we have not actually begun to access that cash reserve. We've been able to extend some of the dollars that we had in the prior year budget by reducing our expenses. And so we're in a very sound financial position right now. In addition to the endowed funds, we also have just cash on hand, about $750,000. All right, so over the past 5 years, when we talk about the community support and going out and raising dollars from the community, we have been so fortunate to have the community invest $2.5 million in the foundation's work over these past 5 years. This year, in addition to that 2.5 million that's been donated, we also have about $500,000 in pledged support that's been secured this year as well. So I'm excited because that brings us over $3 million. So the foundation, we talk a lot about having a 30-year view. The school district, we watch what you do, and there's so many demands on you. As you're watching test scores, you're thinking about curriculum, you are laser focused on what's happening in the classroom today. And where we hope that the foundation can be a good strategic partner is by engaging with the outside community, industry, other community leaders to be looking at these long-range trends and helping forge a dialogue with our educators about how we can make sure that our kids are well positioned to succeed in this rapidly changing world. We think a lot about not just the achievement gap, but that opportunity gap and how that translates into different outcomes for kids when they leave the high school system, when they graduate and enter the world. What is their economic power, and how have we leveraged the power of K-12 to set kids up for economic mobility? So when we take a regional view, we work a lot with our regional economic development partners. REACH, maybe the nonprofit that you're familiar with. REACH was formed about the same time that the Education Foundation was in response to the closure of Diablo. And REACH is looking here on the Central Coast at how to create a more diversified and robust economy so that the kids who leave our school system have great head of household jobs, hopefully waiting for them right here in our region. They developed a strategic plan that has 7 priority industries that they are targeting for investment and job creation. And so we have focused really heavily on the work that REACH is doing and thinking about how can we create next generation talent for next generation jobs here on the Central Coast. So practically, what that looks like in terms of how the foundation is investing. Hopefully you're all familiar with iInnovate, which so far has been our flagship initiative that we're excited to be supporting. iInnovate was launched at the elementary schools, and it was started in March of 2020. We literally got our launch check the week before schools closed, which forced us to pivot a little bit, but the district was just an incredible partner in navigating that with us. And I went back and sat with Howard Carroll of the MEOC Trust, who has invested about $1.2 million in this work to date. And I sat with him over the summer, and I pulled out the original document that we had put in front of him in December of 2019. And in that document, we had very specific timelines and metrics of success year by year of how we saw this work rolling out and what we hope to accomplish. And even with a giant pandemic erupting in the middle of our timeline, it was pretty remarkable to see that we hit every single metric on time. Some we actually saw achieved ahead of schedule, remarkably enough, and we did it under budget for what we had forecast at the time. needless to say, he's been very pleased with San Luis Coastal as a partner. And so the investment was in rolling out a district-wide strategy, which included innovation labs at all 10 of our elementary schools, looking at model lessons. So creating a roadmap for teachers to understand how to integrate this hands-on 21st century instruction into core learning, and then professional development so teachers feel confident and supported. We've done a little adapting in collaboration with the district. One of the things that we did last year was, or 2 years ago, was bring online some instructional support, some aides who go in and make sure that the students have regular access to the labs and are providing real kind of hands-on support to the teachers, making sure that the labs are set up, that the technology is ready to go. If the teachers have any needs for troubleshooting, the aides are there to support the teachers to make the lab a less intimidating environment. And then we are trying to foster more cross-dialogue between our educators and industry. So we have a team of what we call our LED teachers. These are our learning experience designers. These are elementary teachers who volunteer to collaborate with us to field test the lessons in their classrooms, provide feedback, and create just a good collaboration with our TOSAs. And then we've also, over the last year, begun creating cross-dialogue between our elementary and our secondary teachers and getting them talking about what's happening in the CTE pathways and exposing our elementary teachers to what's happening in middle school, high school, so that they feel more connected and can kind of see how to connect learning to what's happening in the secondary space. We've also taken our teachers out to industry and done a series of industry field trips to support dialogue between CEOs, HR directors, and kindergarten, first, second grade teachers. And it has been remarkable to see how that has influenced our teachers' thinking. Every time we do this, it changes the type of grant proposals we get from teachers, what they're asking for, the opportunities they want to bring to kids. And I think it's been really meaningful to them to see that they have a seat at the table and that they are critical path in the eyes of industry to creating that talent pipeline. And then we've also made an effort to bring industry leaders to our campuses and really show off the investment that's been made in our high schools through Measure D. It's really fun to see the CEOs and the executive teams from local industries in engineering or technology walk onto the campus of Morro Bay High School and say, man, you guys have stuff that's like on par with Cal Poly. And they start dreaming and they begin asking questions like, would you allow our team to come in and like guest speak, or like how can we get more involved? And so we see that the spaces spark the imaginations of our industry leaders and think about ways that they can really lean in with time, talent, and treasure to invest in what's happening in schools. And of course, I have to brag on the I Innovate TOSAs, Katie and Sarah. They have just been central to the work that we're doing. They have been thought partners for us over the last few years as classroom teachers who have stepped up to help shape and lead this work alongside of us. They've provided incredible insights into how to build and grow that LED team organically, because every year we've seen significant growth, even as so much is being asked of our teachers. And these last couple years have been hard, right? And teachers have come through the pandemic. They've come back and kids have been a little bit dysregulated. There's been a lot that's been asked of them. And so for teachers year over year to be signing up to lean into something that's completely voluntary and optional has been really inspiring. And I give a tremendous amount of credit to Katie and Sarah for understanding how to make it inspiring to teachers, create a supported environment, and make it really meaningful work. And then they are front lines of interacting with and building confidence within the community. Our donors, our board, know Katie and Sarah by name, and they give because they have confidence, not in me, but in Katie and Sarah, who they see in these spaces, working with the teachers, working with the students, and they know that it's real because they have Katie and Sarah on the front lines leading the work with them. All right, a couple other programs. You're probably familiar with our Next Gen Scholars Program. This was something that was stood up following a few years of work from the Foundation's Opportunity Task Force. And the issue that we were trying to get our hands around is how do we remove barriers for disadvantaged students, first generation students, and build their confidence and their practical capacity to pursue their dreams. And so we knew that there were students within our school system who were not taking advantage of some of the opportunities such as AP courses because they didn't have the financial resources to take the AP exam. Maybe they don't qualify for the waiver because they're just above that income eligibility or cutoff. And so we wanted to find a way to come alongside these students. And so after a couple years of design work, this past year, we were able to launch the pilot of the Next Gen Scholars Program. We have Jessica Baza, who was brought in as the family liaison. Jessica is one of the middle school counselors in the district, and so we've been able to provide her with an extra duty stipend to spend some time getting to know and reaching out to the families. And then she works directly with these 44 students, each of whom have been given $1,000 scholarship from the foundation that they can use for costs that they might encounter during middle school and high school as they pursue their college or career goals. Athletics for Achievement is another program that the foundation has been really excited to see roll out. We believe that it's just important for kids to build their confidence, build their connections, and feel like they have a place in their school community. And being part of a team is a really powerful way to foster that sense of connection. So it's been exciting to watch that program roll out this past year. And although the district has been very much in the lead on that program, we are honored to be a support funder of that. You may remember that last year we decided to jump into the deep and fast running waters of outdoor science camp, and have been particularly moved by the equity challenge that represents. And so last year we piloted a partnership with all 10 elementary school PTAs. We were able to raise and invest $125,000, which essentially matched the commitment that the district had made last year. You had really generously, in year one coming out of COVID, pledged 100% support for the cost of outdoor science camp. The second year it was 50%. This current year it's 25%. And so last year we were able to match that 50%. This year we're going to be evolving our model a little bit, and rather than doing it on a percentage basis, we're doing a targeted equity sort of grant program. So it's really looking at where the sites have need and putting our dollars at that level of need. We do have a $25,000 matching grant that we've been able to secure, and so we're going to be bringing that out to our community partners, and we're excited to see that roll out this year. Today, actually, it shouldn't say yesterday, it should say today, because yesterday was Labor Day, and I didn't realize that when I was making the presentation. But today, we opened our grant applications for this year's teacher grants. This is something that we've done every year since the foundation was formed. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the Teach Foundation, who was very active in providing teacher grants long before the foundation was established. We've been able to join forces with them, and now we're doing a joint grant-making round with the Teach Foundation. And so we are excited we've started to see some applications roll in as early as this morning. Teachers were very prompt. They got gold stars for how quickly they turned around their applications. So those applications, the application period will be open for another couple weeks. And then arts and music. This is a little bit of a new frontier for us, but it's one that we're excited to explore and hopefully grow our portfolio in. So this past year, we heard from the community that there was a need for new pianos at some of our secondary sites. And so we reached out and asked our principals and music teachers to kind of identify what their needs were. And they came back with a wish list. And that wish list included what you see here, which is a grand piano, 3 baby grand pianos, and 2 upright pianos. And so the community was just incredible and provided very generous support. And we were able to fulfill this wish list for our 2 high schools and 2 middle schools. And with that, I just want to say thank you for the incredible partnership. It has been an amazing 5 years. And as I am out in the community, I spend a lot of time bragging about the incredible partnership with the district and telling the story of what a good investment you are. And the investment value is because of the leadership of your board. It's because of the quality of teachers that you have, the quality of administrators that you have who are doing the work that the community has the opportunity to support. So we appreciate being able to do this work alongside you. Thank you.
Like to go to the public, see if there's anyone here who'd like to comment. Anyone on Zoom, Ms. Dawson? I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Baltadano, who is a former Foundation board member, for being with us this evening. Thank you for your work on the board. And we'll come back to the board. Mr. Buckman, then, Mr. Clausen.
I was wondering if you could just explain the scenario with the with the endowment and the period of time to catch up to inflation and getting back the principal amount, and how that affects the philosophy of the foundation over what could be a few years.
Yeah, so we have a formula. I don't have it in front of me, but we calculate, we sort of reset the sort of principal value based on inflation. And so whatever that kind of adjusted purchasing power number is becomes sort of the new marker, which is the new base. So it started at 10 million. As inflation grows, if it grows by 8%, then it's 10 million plus 8% becomes the new floor that we have to then spend only from the growth after adjusted for that inflation number. And so right now we are below the 10 million. The inflation adjusted balance has been calculated to be somewhere north of 11 million. And so we just have to wait for the market to rebound and then continue to adjust north based on whatever that year's inflation number is. So we are going to be playing a bit of catch up with the endowment. And so it could be, a couple years before we catch up. So we are working with Wacker Wealth Partners as our investment manager, and we asked them if they could model for us what the time frame could look like. And they said, no, they can't model it.
So just say theoretically it takes a couple years. I mean, how does that operationally change how you approach the next 2 to 3 years? And what extra support do you need? I mean, how do we create more community visibility to the fact that there might be more acute near-term need, or is that something we don't want to talk about? I mean, how does it affect?
Yeah, so I would say there's not going to be a significant impact on what the foundation does or how we do it, in part because we have very low operating expenses. And so our draw on the endowment is, in a normal year, very low. And we were able to build a very healthy cash reserve. And so we are in a good posture to go 2, potentially 3 years, depending on how we calibrate our burn rate, which right now is, again, set very low. So I am optimistic that it will just be business as usual for the coming years. And because we made the decision early on to not rely on the endowment to fund programs, but instead to emphasize donor support for programs and the endowment for operations, we have some good muscle memory within the foundation board that we are a fundraising board, and we can only grow and invest in programs at the pace that we can fundraise for them. And so far, even though the endowment is down, our fundraising has remained strong. And so we've not had to make any real adjustments on our program investments. So we are optimistic that even with some of the market volatility, that we're in a very stable position.
So you're saying operate for a few years, get that endowment back where it needs to be, and then it becomes an accelerator? Is that how you're thinking about it?
I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. What support do you need from us?
The district has been just an incredible partner, and I mean that very, very sincerely. As I mentioned at the outset, the way that the foundation was set up, the district provides my position, provides office space. And so that takes a lot of pressure off of the foundation and allows us to really go out into the community and present a huge value proposition. I was meeting with a donor this morning, and he was just amazed that we don't charge any overhead on donor contributions. And so that is in no small part because of the partnership with the school district. And so, we would like to see that partnership continue. And really, the way that we fundraise is based on the track record of performance. When the district comes alongside the foundation and we put our heads together and say, what is the big opportunity to do something meaningful for kids? And then we raise the money and the school district implements with fidelity, and the donors look at it and say, wow, the district did exactly what they said they were going to do. And in the case of the programs that we rolled out so far, they do it better than we expected. That's a kind of a head scratcher for some of the members of our community that really didn't expect that. So I would say just keep doing what you're doing is really the most helpful thing is, continue to just do great work for kids and let us support you.
Anything else? Thank you. Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
It's important work. Thank you. Right. Our next item is 9.05, approve board member pay for permissible absence.
Yes, I'm asking the board to approve or excuse the absence of Marilyn Roger on the August 15th meeting. She had to undergo some medical procedures and was unable to be at the meeting during that time. So with your approval of this absence, she's able to get paid her normal stipend.
Is there anyone from the public who wants to talk to us about this? All right, Mr. Buckman.
Yes, unless there's some further discussion, I'd like to move approval of proposed of this item. And if I can just make a comment.
Sure.
Ms. Roger just continues to be an inspiration to me, given the seriousness of the condition that she's going through and the strain on her. I think she maybe missed one meeting, but she's in attendance and thinking about this board all the time. And it's just an inspiration. So I'd like to move approval.
Thank you. And I'd like to second that. Right, Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
and I am a yes. And Mrs. Roger and Mr. Unger are absent at this time. Right. Our next item, we have a couple of proposed bylaw revisions.
Yes, I would like to bring forward tonight 2 first readings of board bylaws. Thank you again to Ellen and Mark and their work with Diane Frost, the former assistant superintendent for San Luis Coastal. These 2 items are significantly long and kind of help direct and guide your work as board members. The first is related to conflict of interest, and the opening line, I think, of the board bylaw says it all: maintaining the highest ethical standards and ensure decisions are made in the best interests of the district and the public. And it goes on to address Political Reform Act, campaign contributions, and managing public investments. If you are a board member that manages public investments, and the ways that you must disclose any conflicts of interest. Any questions from the board?
And you're recommending this return for a second reading?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the public fascinated by this particular policy tonight? All right, seeing no one, any board discussion? And this will be back at our next meeting on the consent calendar.
Thank you. And I have also a second board bylaw, number 9320. I'd like to bring forward and recommend for a second reading next month, which is relating to meetings and notices. And it's just the standard recommended updates through Gamut and our legal team, which has reviewed it with the board policy subcommittee.
Thank you. Any public input? No, seeing none, then this will, with the consent of the board, this will return for a second reading. All right, thank you, Mr. Mashita. Right, we will move on to our action consent agenda. Please let me know if there's something you would like pulled. 10.01, approval of certificated and classified personnel items. 10.02, approval of furniture and equipment request. 10.03, approval of minutes from August 15, 2023. 10.04, approval of purchase orders and Cal card purchases. 10.05, disposal of surplus. 10.06, approval of warrants and payroll. 10.07, proposed new board policy 3515.2, disruptions, second reading. And 10.08, proposed revisions to board policy 4141, 4241, collective bargaining agreement, second reading. Well, that was easy. Then a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve items 10.01 through 10.08.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Buckman and a second by Mr. Banfield. Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
and I am a yes. All right. Moving on to advanced agenda. Anything for advanced agenda? Okay. Then reports by board members. Anyone? Mr. Banfield.
Well, I'm sad Chris had to leave, but he and I had a delightful situation. We went out to Monarch Grove, and they had their grand opening of their playground. Now, I've never been involved in a ribbon cutting before. So we had these big scissors and cut the ribbon. That was so much fun. The children so excited, and Katie described how the students had a great deal of input in designing that playground. They've got a zip line out there. That's probably going to be the hottest item around for, people are going to be coming to see that thing. But it was just the neatest thing, to see that. I just loved it. And well, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you at our next meeting. Thanks again.
Adios, amigo.